This is fuchsia fulgens. They're like sort of very elegant earrings. And you can see the size of the leaves. It's quite a soft-leaved fuchsia. It grows in a pot about a metre tall. And it takes a long time to start flowering. So it is normally sort of October, November for me that it actually really gets going. And I was just thinking as I was out there, the only two people in the world that I would go out in the garden and cut all my best bits of plant off for are the two of you. I was just thinking, why am I doing this? I wouldn't do it for anything else.
Hello and welcome to episode 100 of Talking Dirty. I can't believe we've made it to
Happy birthday.
A whole 100 episodes. Feels like just yesterday we started, though actually our little book, we're on the final page of our little book which all the episode notes are in, so there we go, all very neat. It's like we planned it or something. Over at East Ruston Old Vicarage, looking super smart and very preppy this rather dull autumnal wintry day, we have Alan Edward Herbert Gray, our happy and very handsome horticulturalist.
Well, my little book is this one, and I'm afraid it's only half full, so mine's bigger than yours.
What a surprise.
Well, lighting up the grey Cambridgeshire countryside, we have Thordis Maria Sophia Fredriksson.
And lighting up, I suppose you're somewhere London way, aren't you? Our guest for episode 100, helping us straddle the country, is none other than award-winning garden designer, author, animal rights advocate, allotmenteer, all kinds of things that begin with A, Cleve West. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. I'm in Hampton Wick, which is just down the road from Hampton Court.
Oh, there we go.
But thank you for inviting me. This is brilliant.
We want to know your middle name, I suppose, before we move on to anything else. But particularly because your first name is so fantastic.
Well, it's Francis. That's my middle name.
Any reasons behind any of them?
Well, I came from a very strong Catholic family. So, Francis is my middle sort of saint's name, which ties in quite nicely with the animal rights stuff because, St. Francis of Assisi. Cleve is, oh God, do you know what? I meant to look up the name of the film. I think it's called The Hunters. Robert Mitchum played a character in the Korean War. I ought to tell your listeners that I've got a frog in my throat. I'm coming down with something right now. So excuse me if I start hacking away.
Send healing vibes, even though by the time this goes out, hopefully you'll be out the other side of it. But, the thought is there.
Yeah, so names, yes. I often wish I had instead of the saint's name, I wish I'd had my granddad's middle name, which was Barton. It was like a family name that got handed down because I would have got a shed load more work from a double-barreled surname, as you know.
Well, you can do it, Cleve.
Well, I could do, I suppose. I should do it as an experiment, really.
Yeah, exactly. Why not?
Cleve Barton West.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Mind you, it's not like you really need any kind of boost, is it, Cleve? You've got, goodness knows, what is it, 6 gold medals at Chelsea to your name, all of these wonderful gardens that you've designed. We've always been inspired by you. If Alan and I had £1 for every time we've talked about that parsnip you included in that Chelsea garden, we would be extremely rich. I don't even know how many times that's come up on the radio, on this podcast.
It was a pure stroke of genius. I was at the Chelsea Flower Show that day when the judges were going round and they were looking at this. I mean, they were looking at a parsnip, for Christ's sake, and they're scratching their heads and everything else and saying, well, some kind of umbrella farm.
Well, it's fantastic because I'm a garden designer. I'm not a botanist, and I really struggle with plant names sometimes. I've got mild dyslexia as well, which doesn't help. And that I just lived that moment. I really enjoyed that moment because all the good, the great and the good came up to me to ask me what that name was. And I said, well, don't you know? Surely, I really milked it.
I'll tell you another outcome of that, Cleve, was that all my friends went out and bought parsnip seeds. I went to the farm shop and bought some parsnips, and our mind bloomed before theirs did.
Well, I tell you what, I'm just because I forgot we didn't grow parsnips this year at the allotment for some really weird reason, and I'm thinking I might slip one into the garden at Chelsea, but instead of getting them from the allotment, which I normally do, just buy one. Just buy a parsnip, stick it in the ground. It still works.
Yeah, exactly.
Before we come on to talking about Chelsea, because extremely excitingly, you are returning to the Chelsea Flower Show after 7 years without you, and we really have missed you. I must ask you about your allotment, because I've just got to the top of the allotment list. I've got a little quarter plot up the road, and I'm just bursting with ideas and enthusiasm for it. So any tips that anyone can share with me, I am all ears.
Well, the biggest tip, I mean, you've already had Charles Dowding.
Yeah, I was just going to say that.
What more can I say? He just makes life. He should get paid for all the hours he saves people.
We're actually doing that with our vegetable plot here at East Ruston this year, because I mean, I've got a shed full of cardboard at the moment.
Yeah.
I'm waiting to do, the cardboard and then the compost. And I think it really is good.
Really.
And there's one thing that Charles said to me on the podcast, in actual fact. I said, well, I get masses of chickweed. He said, well, chickweed is the weed that follows the rotavator. Yeah. And if you think about it, it's turning the soil over and bringing all the seeds up to germination level.
Yeah, yeah. And you can eat chickweed,
Yeah.
That's the first time someone's mentioned a weed and someone's been able to pull it out of their show and tell and demonstrate it on the podcast.
Well, I'll probably explain a bit more about that later. But yeah, Charles Dowding's techniques, you can't go far wrong with that. We can't get enough compost. Our one failing is that we can't generate enough compost to do do that every year. So we're going to have to buy in some every so often. But it's wonderful. The other mistake I made was to plant apple trees all around the beds. Step over apple trees.
Yeah.
And they got a little bit bigger than step over, but all the couch grass hides in the roots of the apple trees.
Yeah.
So you can never get rid of those completely. But I've just learned that you can. With this book, I've just learned that you can actually eat couch grass. So actually, don't quote me on that. But in there, if you get this book, I think it does say that I only found that out last night. You can actually eat couch grass. So
how to enjoy your weeds.
Happy days.
Your kind of life, having an allotment, it must fit so well because you're vegan. I'm sure you're really great at experimenting with different recipes and conjuring up different things. Poor man's cheese, I saw on your Instagram, things like that. So being able to grow a certain amount of produce to eat at home, it all fits in so well with your philosophy and your kind of approach to the world.
Oh, definitely, really does. I mean, we're real amateurs at the allotment. We're nowhere near Charles Dowding's skills, but whatever you can grow and eat, knowing that there's been no chemicals, put on the plant, then it's such a bonus. It really does feel good.
Yeah. How long have you been allotmenteering?
Gosh, 20. This is our 22nd year. So yeah, we took over one in 2000. So we feel like real stalwarts now, old timers. I still haven't got a clue what I'm doing, but I pretend.
Well, I don't know how you find time for it, because you do so much and you've written books and obviously you design gardens all over the place, and you've been working on this Chelsea design, and I don't know if you ever planned to come back to Chelsea or whether it was a sort of coming together of ideas that lured you back to Main Avenue.
I had no plans at all. I'd sort of done enough. People had seen enough of me, and I'd seen enough of the show garden. And it was, I don't know, it was timing really. What with everything going on, and I knew that if I was going to do another one, it would be for a charity and not anyone else. And so when Centrepoint got in touch, it was a no-brainer really. Once I'd met them and discussed what they wanted, and they'd heard what I wanted to do as well. It's like chemistry, it really worked. So I'm looking forward to it. Normally I am very nervous about it, obviously, because I'm trying something different. But I've got to that age where actually, you do want to do the best for you, but medals and all that thing, I've got over that now.
You reach the summit age, don't you?
Yeah, that's right. I'm just going to do something which I hope will cause a little bit of a stir and really sort of send out a strong message for Centrepoint, and Centrepoint will hopefully get some attention from it.
Yeah. And this is part of Project Giving Back, I think.
Yes, yeah. It's fantastic because I mean the downside of working for a charity is that you're taking their money to actually build this very expensive show garden at Chelsea, and which just swallows up money. It's crazy. But Project Giving Back actually funds all these different show gardens. I think it's for the next. They did it last year for the first time. This will be the second year to 2023, and they're doing a year after that as well.
What happens to the garden when Chelsea's finished, Cleve?
When Chelsea's finished, we're going to fragment this garden into various local locations, service centres for Centrepoint in and around London, so we keep the mileage down. They've got a centre up in that they're planning for up in Manchester, and
Yeah.
we're hoping to take some ideas from this garden and redesign parts of that as well. But the good thing, the most positive thing that of all, is the fact that through our discussions and being excited about Chelsea, they're sort of realizing how important gardens are for some of the young people they look after.
Yeah.
So they're very keen on exploring the idea of getting gardens into some of these centres, and that's really exciting. So it's not necessarily policy yet, but we're hoping that it will be at some point, and that will be the best legacy of all, really. So that gardens can be attached to some of
I
these.
think probably that legacy stems out of the last 2 years of our lives, Cleve, don't you? Where we've been, we've been caged up like animals and all the rest of it. And, to have a garden, to go out in the garden, to actually be in the garden.
Yeah.
And, to do it, to be in it, to use it, it's just so healing.
We're so lucky as well to have that that sort of sanctuary to escape to, aren't we?
Absolutely.
And especially with allotments, we were allowed to use the allotment from day one of the lockdown. All our neighbours were looking at the curtain saying, "Where the hell are they going?"
Rule breakers. And the garden itself, I must say that reading the concept behind it appeals to me. I mean, there's always this ongoing debate about how wild a space makes a garden at Chelsea, and I suppose I haven't seen the drawing of the design, so I don't know how wild it's going to be. But the idea of mixing together such a lot of different plants, be they native or ornamental, be they things that are classed as weeds, I really like that. I perhaps embrace a little bit too much of an informal style at home anyway.
Yeah, I think if you came to our allotment, you can see that we do the same. It's very much like that. And particularly in the last year or so, we've sort of let things, I've become fascinated just to see how nature does it, how it just gets on with it without our help. And, it might end up with me getting a letter from the council about our allotment, but it is fascinating when you watch how things grow, particularly in spring when it's like going absolutely, bonkers.
One of my favourite places in the world when I was a child and growing up, and I'm talking about 5, 6, 7, 8, probably through till 12 or something like that, was an area on the farm called the Spreading Oaks. And it was an area where there were some lovely old oak trees. They would got hollow trunks and you could hide in them and climb them and all the rest of it. But these oaks were growing in water meadows. Those water meadows, I learned to ice skate on the water that formed on these water meadows. It's only about 9 inches to a foot deep. But in the spring, they were absolutely covered with Dactylorhizas and all manner of wildflowers. It's just such a magical place.
Yeah.
And if I look back on that from now, I mean, many years later, I look back on that and I think that is exactly what gardens are looking like today. But I didn't realise it then, because gardens in those days everything was terribly formal and 6 inches apart and all the rest of it. Summer bedding schemes were blue lobelia, white alyssum and red salvias. The kind of thing. Very patriotic. What's the word? Patriotic. Very patriotic. Completely non-natural. But the Spreading Oaks was one of my favourite places. Alas, the farmer pulled down the trees and it got ploughed up and turned into crops. It wasn't allowed to be as it was a natural garden.
It's quite interesting, isn't it, when you go back to places you knew as a child? Because I grew up in Somerset, I spent my teenage years in Porlock in Somerset. And it's fantastic. We had Exmoor as our backyard, and the sea, the Bristol Channel, and everything.
There's a little broom called Porlock, isn't there?
A broom?
Yeah, plant broom, and it's called.
Oh, see, I thought you meant a broom.
No, Cytisus, I think.
I think there's a time as well.
Yes, there is. You're right. Yeah, well done.
It's a wonderful part of the world. That's where I go on my holidays, and you grew up there.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So we live, obviously enjoyed, and I think I've got the landscape bug through subconsciously. But then when I went back after say 10 or 12 years, having studied more gardening and more about plants, you suddenly read the landscape differently, don't you? Start recognizing names of plants and trees and shrubs. It's quite interesting.
Yeah, and I thought as well on the allotment, watching what happens, there's such an exciting seed bank in the soil. You really have no idea what might turn up, whether it is, actual sort of weedy stuff or potentially kind of cultivated seeds that are lurking around.
Chickweed.
But all that I brought some plants I've got here are just stuff I've picked on the way to work, and it's some of the plants I'll be using at Chelsea. So this probably will be my last Chelsea, because they won't want me back after this one.
Well, I don't know. You sound like you're bang on trend. If you look at some of the gardens which have been capturing the public imagination in recent years, the wilder the better, I think. Yeah,
I think the challenge is going to be, this is why I'm slightly nervous about it, is that the challenge is going to be trying to make it look realistic. And, you can do that because it is a stage set. All the gardens, no matter whether ornamental, wild, whatever, they're just stage sets. With it, 2 or 3 weeks later, they won't really look as good. So the challenge is really trying to balance a natural, this ruin, which is like a demolished house, and showing how nature is reclaiming it. We won't be able to do it exactly as nature does it.
I can't wait to see this. It's going to be really interesting. This is just so nostalgic for me, Cleve, because that's the kind of things that you did used to see. I mean, on a Sunday afternoon, when Dad got the car ready, polished it in the morning, put petrol in it and all the rest of it, we go and collect Granny and Grandfather, and we go off for a ride. And that's all you did. You didn't go anywhere to a destination. Yeah. But, the things you saw when you were driving through the countryside, which was ruined farmhouses. Yeah. And sometimes we'd get out and we'd go and have a look. And my Granny was a great one. She'd always have a trowel in her bag. And if there was something worth growing, she'd dig it up.
Great. She'd dig it up.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
It wasn't illegal in those days, I have to say.
But like I say, the challenge is trying to create a balance between something that's obviously going to be a managed garden, because we're saying that someone's looking after it, but also trying to let nature have a bit more of a say than it normally would. So all the things you would normally take out, because we've got so conditioned to just yanking out weeds rather than, they're wildflowers basically, aren't they? And they're almost like the first line of defense when you get a demolition site or some sort of scarring to the landscape. The weeds are doing the first line. They're the band-aid, aren't they?
Yeah.
The initial band-aid.
I remember Penny Hobhouse many years ago, when she went to her latest garden, I think, she said that she was leaving this little annual Spurge. I don't know the name of it. I know it's a Euphorbia, but you got it. Well done. That man's great.
Sorry. Actually, no, I showed you the wrong one. That's the Spurge.
Yes.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
90% of my front garden is full of that.
That's the chickweed. Don't eat that, for God's sake.
No. But Penny said, I'm leaving that because I like the look of it. I mean, if you stand, just take time and look at it in one of her books. And I just thought, yes, she's right,
Yeah, no, it's lovely. It's a lovely little thing. What's it called? I wrote it down because I didn't know it until the other day. Euphorbia peplus.
Yeah, that's it.
It's funny because I used to, when I first moved in, and it moved in around all my plants, because before, my front garden, it's a very small strip by the path everyone walks along, and it was so compacted, and it had loads of membrane on it and loads of aggregate on top of it, and it was just this bleak no man's land. So then I had to sort of get rid of all that and try and improve the soil and put plants in, and it's lovely now. It's a bit chaotic, but that little Spurge, as soon as there wasn't membrane and stuff, it covered it, and I used to try pulling it out.
I don't think you shouldn't say chaotic. You should say it has an informal naturalness about it.
Yeah,
exactly.
Definitely.
Lots of informal naturalism in my plot.
Yeah.
But now I actually, because it was a bit of a crazy year and I wasn't able to remotely have a go at it, I think there's a point when it first seeds when it can look not as attractive if you just let it go, and then it becomes all these lovely little hummocks of bright zingy green. I'm now actually quite a fan of it. I'm with Penny. I'll admit I wasn't with Penny to begin with when it first moved in, even though I'm quite a weed appreciator, but now I've been won over, and it's having a whale of a time in my front garden.
Well, that's why that's why it is going to be a challenge, because nature needs time. It needs more than a year to actually make everything neat and, well, not neat and tiny.
You'll do it because you're a wizard.
They sort of grow into each other. And so one thing we're trialing is we've got piles of rubble in this garden. So basically, shall I explain the garden?
Yeah.
Okay, so the garden is it's a very visceral message. It's like a demolished house, basically. And the idea is that it's sort of a strong metaphor for being displaced and uprooted. And we've got a big silver birch tree that's been uprooted and fallen down. So very strong metaphors. And we've got the weeds and a mixture of ornamentals as well. So it's showing how nature is sort of healing the wounds, but then how it's working with a gardener who's looking after the space as well. And then there'll be lots of seedlings from this silver birch tree that's fallen down. and they're coming up in the building. So the building itself becomes a garden as well. So the only recognisable part of the whole place is a basement kitchen, and I've based this on my stepdaughter's Victorian terrace house in Peckham. So I've got all the dimensions from there. So the only recognisable part of the whole house is this hearth, like a kitchen, sunken kitchen with a hearth. So the hearth is a strong symbolism for family life, and warmth and love and all that. So the rest of it is all like going a bit bonkers.
The metaphors are fantastic. In case people don't know, Centrepoint is all about youth homelessness and lots of great projects to get kids off the street. So all of that uprootedness, a demolished home, but still that hearth, and actually, I suppose the resilience of weeds plays a huge part in that as well.
That's right. Exactly. And so the weeds are sort of a metaphor for they symbolise Centrepoint patching everyone up and sending them out into the big wide world, all sort of mended. So that's the excitement. That's the exciting part of it. Trying to actually put it together and make it work is going to be difficult. So we've got these rubble piles with bricks and smashed up bits of debris, and we've made some already. The plan is that we sow seeds within these rubble piles and put them on pallets, and lower them into place. Now I've got things like Cleavers, Cleavers, Galium aparine.
Yeah.
It's
I don't know why, Cleve, but it has a nickname in Norfolk that's referred to as Sticky Willies.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, right, that's good one. I like that. Because my nickname was Cleavers when I was a kid.
Yeah.
So what we've been sowing seeds in these rubble plants. We've been planting some plants in them, but we're also sowing seeds. And to my horror, because of this mild winter, all the Cleavers are actually sprouting already at the allotment, the source where I got them from, all the seeds. And I don't know, you might be able to help me on this, you two, but if an annual weed comes up now, way before it's meant to, will the first frost kill it?
Not the first frost, but if we have any prolonged frost, it could die.
So all my plans may be...
Can you fleece them? Because I mean, some of them, they are quite resilient as long as they don't get hit too hard.
The great thing is we haven't had a real winter for several years now.
No.
And there's always gloom merchants saying we're going to get
it will be, won't it?
No, not necessarily. I shouldn't worry too much. And I always think that there's always places like hedge bottoms where you find these weeds. And I mean, Cleavers is a great thing for going through hedges, as you know. And you always find, however cold it is, you'll always find seedlings there.
Yeah. But it's not a plant. If you imagine the plant, the way they plant at Chelsea, everything's in pots. You plant them in pots.
Yeah.
Cleavers is just not one of those plants you're going to be able to plant. So we have to sow the seed and let it do its thing and just hope for the best.
Yeah.
So we're flying by the seat of our pants. Well, I'm flying by the seat of my pants.
It definitely illustrates not that anyone doubts the extreme planning that goes into a Chelsea garden, but all of the months of work and experimentation. You don't even know what's going to work. You just have to cross your fingers and hope and do your best.
Yeah.
Are you putting plants in the basement?
Yes, there'll be plants in the basement as well. So there'll be all sorts of stuff coming up.
Is it just brought home to mind? I once had a flat when I was, I suppose, 21, 22, something like that in Norwich. And at the back of my flat, there was a kind of light well. And in this light well, there was just hardly any light at all. It was very dark and very gloomy looking, lots of moss and stuff like that, tumbled down old bricks and stuff like that. Yeah. Somebody had actually had in their house Fatsia japonica in their flat as a plant, a house plant, which is very popular in the early 70s.
Yeah.
They'd actually lobbed it out the window to get rid of it because, and of course it had lived in this light well, and there it was in this dark space. And I just suddenly thought, and there were sort of common ferns there as well and stuff like that.
Yeah, asplenium.
Amazing.
Yeah, incredible. No, it's fantastic what will survive, and like I say, the whole thing's going to be an experiment. So going to try and enjoy the ride. It'd be a bit nerve-wracking at times.
And I think you suggested that, you've shown us a couple of your wilder, weedier bits of show and tell, but that there's a Chelsea theme to some of the things you picked.
I wonder if we're going to see any moss in show and tell.
Well, I haven't got any here, put it that way.
I can just imagine that Cleve West at the Chelsea Flower Show having won Best in Show with his new garden, latest garden, comeback garden, and all the rest of it. He'll be down there every night spraying his moss in the basement.
Well, one of my first show gardens, we actually took some moss for something. I've never got over the guilt about the whole thing. I took some lovely moss from someone's garden. I felt really guilty afterwards because it looked far better in the garden than it did at Chelsea.
Well, the only one thing you shouldn't feel guilty about is the fact that it regenerates very well.
Oh yeah, under certain light conditions. Though I
Yeah.
think the light conditions were different. But it's reminded me about our tree. Our tree was another thing I felt guilty about because I wanted a wind blown. I didn't want. Once I said we we're going to use an uprooted tree, I had all these people saying, "Oh, we found this beautiful tree," and they sent me these amazing pictures of this tree rotting away with ferns and lichens and everything. I said, but that's so stunning, and it's just a living ecosystem. All the creatures you're going to disturb.
Yeah.
So I didn't know. I suddenly thought, oh God, I've sold this idea to Project Giving Back and Centrepoint. What are we going to do? Then lo and behold, Crocus, who are going to be building the garden for us. So yeah, so we've got Crocus building the garden, Hortus Loci doing all the plants with with Mark Straver. So what are we going to do about this tree? So when we started doing some work at Crocus ahead of the time, I had to paint a mural for the garden. They said, oh, well, we're expanding our reservoir because during the summer, the reservoir just dried out, literally within weeks in that hot spell. So we're expanding the reservoir, and lo and behold, there's this magnificent birch which is coming out. And so it's still sad to see this magnificent tree come down, but at least it wasn't taken down deliberately for the show. So that was a bit of a relief.
It's absolutely fascinating because what you're describing is this birch tree that's fallen down and the young birch seedlings coming up. I mean, which is exactly what happens in nature. We've got a log pile just down near the entrance to the garden. And I mean, I've just left it there. And it's been there 15 years, I should think, and it's almost rotted down, but not quite. Yeah. And, the plants that have grown in there, a self-sown Quercus ilex, for instance, the evergreen oak, and the self-sown holly are in there, mosses, lichens, ferns, even Japanese anemones have found their way in there. I haven't planted any of this. Plus the fact we've got nettles and grasses and oxide daisies, it's just, it's almost like a life in itself. It has its life.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this tree will be, obviously, because it's only just come down, it won't have any of the rotting down, but it will be, we can still convey the message that it will be habitat. That's the other thing, emphasizing habitat. So the rock piles and the brick piles and the rubble piles and the tree will all become habitat. So it sort of plays on this whole notion of home throughout the garden. So it's multi-layered.
It's a wonderful idea, and I really love the sensitivity of the approach, because I'm a bit like when we talked to Kate Bradbury the other day, and she'd been rescuing caterpillars and keeping them in her bathroom to make sure they make sure they weren't annihilated by the council's trimming policy. I do love a kind of an emotional approach to gardens and environment, because they are such emotional places. I mean, I get attached to lots of the plants and critters and things in my garden.
No, I know that very well.
I'd love to know what's going on outside your window, Alan.
What's happening?
What's happening? Well, Callum was out there and he's just been bringing some logs in, I think. I don't know. I
thought there might be Chippendales out there or something. It looked very...
I was going to say that. I thought I better not say that. Of course you can do.
Why not?
So plants that are lined up that you've picked for us this morning, we've seen your spurge and your chickweed. What else did you pick out?
Well, it didn't have a flower, but we've got a sow thistle.
Yep.
Did you say sow or sow?
Sow.
Sow
as
thistle.
In female pig.
Yeah, sow thistle. There you go. You've seen the Euphorbia already.
It looks so good on your screen. I'm glad I've changed my mind about it.
There you go. Do you know that one?
Well, see, that's a plant, that little yellow poppy, which I can't remember the name of.
Chelidonium.
That's it, Chelidonium.
Yes, I know.
Well, Chelidonium was a weed of my childhood that I introduced into this garden.
Brilliant. Yeah. And we've got loads. It just pops up at home, and I don't know where it came from originally, but we have it at home and at the allotment. So Celandines. And then this older, this is a real brute at the allotment. This is Pentaglottis.
I love it.
It's the green Alkanet. I mean, I never, ever, ever thought in a million years I would be using this at Chelsea.
But you know, Cleve, Secret shed. I love that plant.
Oh,
I
good.
know
good.
it's a violent taker over of plots, and it will invade your plot. And if you cut the top off the thing, the roots just regrow again. But it's just so lovely in late winter, early spring. All those lovely little bird's eye blue flowers are fantastic.
It really is a fantastic early nectar plant, isn't it?
Yeah.
For pollinators.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that, I mean, I don't know this for sure. I mean, it's from just skipping through this book last night. You know, the plants with deep roots like comfrey, there'll be comfrey in this garden. This one, green alkanet, they draw up a lot of minerals and things from, and so they help other plants, and they keep they keep the soil fertile. So you know, they're good plants to have in the garden. I'm not an expert on all this, but that's my sort of assumption.
And I do love a plant which is so capable of coping in a vast array of situations, because I mean, I one of my favorite walks through Norwich, which sadly I don't live in anymore, but I'd cut through the art college down by the river, and there was this extremely heavily tree shaded area before you sort of went through the ruined arch into this lovely bit of art college, and it was every spring just a carpet of Alkanet. In the dark and in the dry, and it was doing so well and lighting it up, because obviously it's got that kind of foliage and those lovely blue pinprick flowers. And I just want to take my hat off to plants that can cope in that kind of situation.
I know, and the variety of foliage is incredible. You think of that green alkanet and then the chelidonium, the shapes of the plants, the forms are fantastic if you really look. And I find, I mean, it's sad to say that I get more excited these days looking. I've got I can't show you my view, but I've got a little brick wall. I'm in a semi-basement, and there's some grasses, and I can't tell what the other thing is, but anything that's growing in nothing excites me more than anything else. You know, a fantastic, you know, herbaceous border, it doesn't do it for me anymore. It's like I'm looking at all these little things. So even, you know, nettles, which is a great plant, and at our allotment we've got so much with it. It could do with weeding out, but
it's a great food plant for butterflies.
Yeah, food plant for
butterflies.
I've
got banks of nettles in the garden that we leave deliberately, and I tell people, but that's for the butterflies.
Yeah,
and they don't believe you. They look at you and laugh and saying, you haven't got round to doing that, have you?
No, exactly. Do you know what? I really firmly believe that if any garden design courses are thinking of starting out, I think one thing I think all garden designers and gardeners should have as a tool is some sort of entomology course, because I really wish I knew more about insects and mammals and invertebrates and you know, all the smaller things really that keep everything going, and use plants and weeds as host plants, feeding plants. I'm sort of getting a bit late in the day for the likes of me, but
careful.
I was going to include you on that. But yeah, it's a serious issue though. When you think of everything that's going on in the world, biodiversity collapse and everything, it's like, what can we do as gardeners?
We're starting, I think, if you take, just take Charles Dowding's no-dig method, for instance. I mean, just imagine every time you dig a hole, you're going to, the thousands, if not millions of things you're going to affect.
Yeah, exactly.
The microorganisms in the soil and everything else.
Definitely.
I mean, you're still going to affect them to a certain amount when you dig a little hole to put seedling in or something, but nowhere near as much.
No, and as a garden designer, it's like it's really sobering though when I go and visit site, and you can see, and you know, there's some jobs which I started many years ago, and there's still diggers and stuff going on, and I'm thinking, oh my god, you know, what have I done? And it's serious. I like think, what do I need? Do we need to be doing all this? You know, it's a real serious question now.
Well, I've seen you put some really thought-provoking posts online about, I mean, show gardens in particular, where obviously the pursuit of perfection is utmost, and that might lead to some, you know, approaches that we wouldn't necessarily want to see in our gardens these days, talking about maybe pesticides or, you know, removing material which is actually beneficial for wildlife.
That's right. We saw birds feasting on caterpillars last year, and you know, the first instinct from most people is get the sprayer, you know, and I said, no, let's not do that. You know, and I've had a talk with Mark Straber at Hortus Loco. I think he's slightly worried that the fact that you know, his polytunnel is going to be full of dandelion seedlings and all that sort of thing going on. But you know, I've said you don't have to do any weeding with this. This is going to be the easiest. No, it's not going to be that easy. It's quite challenging. But I say I don't want people weeding. Don't want people spraying anything or killing anything. Just let it be. So we'll have nibbled leaves. who's going to be able to tell whether there's a nibbled leaf on this, you know? So this is why I'm quite excited about this garden. I feel it's an important garden for Centrepoint.
And actually, one of the nice things at Chelsea is spotting which gardens all the wildlife is moving into. And so I suspect yours is going to be that one that they're all homing in on like a beacon.
Yeah, that's another worry, you know, because you create these things. Because we once had a tree where we had a bird's nest in it at Chelsea, and we had to leave the tree until August to take it out, until the birds had fledged. So we've got Johnny Woodford, the sculptor I used to work with years ago, and we're working together on this one. He's making, in a small way, he's making some bird boxes, but we're not actually having holes in the bird boxes. There will be a hole, but they won't actually be able to get in. So the last thing we want is another bird sort of living in there.
I remember this happening in the main marquee, and I think it was who was the people that used to do those wonderful topiary yew and box, Swanningtons, wasn't it?
I can't remember.
Anyway, they had a blackbird nesting in one of their topiarized yews. They had to leave it.
Yeah.
Just abandoned at the Royal Hospital.
I know. But it is a sort of a worry. I mean, we had bird baths at the last Chelsea garden I did, and literally within, I'm not kidding, I'm not exaggerating, literally within a minute of putting in its final place, we had birds going in there, right up to the point where it was taken out. It's incredible.
Yeah. In central London, for instance, call it livestock, wildlife, if you like, they are a lot more used to human people, so they're not as frightened as perhaps or as shy as country birds, and so therefore it's an opportunity.
Yeah. No, that's right. Oh, I was woken up because I got this sort of cough developing. I woke up at 1:30 this morning, and there's a noise outside, and I thought we had burglars, and it turned out to be, I put the torch on, the biggest fox I've ever seen. It was almost like a wolf. It was so big, and he was looking into our back door. He had a drink from the pond, and he had a look in the back door, and it was thought he was going to break through the cat flap at one point.
Last year it was the Delphinium exhibitors who'd set everything up perfectly, you know, the pristine precariousness of a Delphinium display, and then they came back the next day and there were fox paw prints sort of in and out serpentining, and I suppose they had to get rid of the paw prints, but actually I think I'm right, Alan, in saying they didn't do any harm to the plants themselves.
No, they didn't. I mean, it's amazing because, you know, when delphiniums, show delphiniums, their heads are very heavy, and they're almost top heavy, and they were sort of singly arranged in these funny shaped vases with a little wide foot, and the thing had gone in and it hadn't knocked a single vase over, which is amazing.
Incredible. Wow.
So not your wolf-sized one then?
No, he wouldn't have been able to get away with it. I want fox footprints in my garden.
Yeah, that'd be epic.
Definitely not going to wash those away.
Hopefully they won't move into the ruin. And
yeah, exactly.
were there any other little bits of plant hovering about on your table?
Oh yeah, this is caper spurge, another type.
Love it. Love it.
Caper spurge.
It's incredible, isn't it? I mean,
it's Euphorbia lathyrus.
Incredible. I mean, it's such an amazing form. I don't know why.
It just has such architecturality about it. I mean, that sort of the way the leaves go like a cross, if you like. Yeah. And the other thing is the colour. I mean, the colour of those leaves in the garden. I mean, they're so glaucous. It's such a handsome plant. I just leave it. I love it.
Yeah, so do I.
I always covet a caper spurge on my dog walk. You're right, Cleve. I get very excited about looking for the things that have seeded into random places, and there's one little neglected corner by some garage where there's this wonderful caper spurge that I'm always very jealous of. And then similarly near my house, someone planted some bedding nicotianas, and they've all seeded across into the tiny little bit of detritus between basically the paving slabs and the curb, and there are all these lovely little lime green nicotianas seeded there.
Yeah, it's incredible. I'm not sure if this is right, but I think I read somewhere that in a square foot of soil, there's roughly about 10,000 seeds.
Yeah.
Which is mind-blowing, isn't it?
It is.
The potential.
Yeah. That's about it on the weed front, I think. This is stuff that I picked up on the way in this morning. So I've got another source for Chelsea. Okay, I've got the good old Phlomis Russelliana, sort of planted because our cat who died last year or earlier this year was called Russell, so I quite like this one. Phlomis Russelliana.
The Phlomis, I was coveting some wonderful seed heads on the Beth Chatto Garden Instagram the other day, because I haven't been able to pop down there to see them in real life, and all the Miss Wilmot's Ghost, and I think it was Allium nigrum seed heads and the Phlomis in the background. Oh, it was such a wonderful combination of seed heads at this time of year.
When you say that's a wonderful combination of seed heads, it gets even better. If we have what's known as a hoarfrost on there, I mean, it blooms again. It just those things, those plants that die with dignity, they have that wonderful skeletal form. It shouldn't be destroyed. No,
that's right. And I've seen goldfinches feasting on the seeds of Phlomis russelliana. But it's a funny plant, because sometimes it gets a bit too cheeky, doesn't it? You have to sort of start reducing the clumps. But
yes,
and I always think, I'm not going to plant that. I'm not going to plant that, and then you end up putting it in because it's just so fantastically sculpted.
If you manage it enough to keep its vigor, then that's fine. You have to go through that period when you cut it back and it looks a wreck, but it comes back. That's
right. Well, I just need your help with this. This is a geranium, which I've got from our garden, which I can't remember the name of, and I haven't got any leaves, I'm afraid.
Is it that sort of sprawly one with glaucous foliage?
Glaucous, that one.
Cydioides or something?
Say again?
Pelargonium, that is Cydioides.
Yeah, Cydioides.
Yes, that's the one, I think.
I love that.
Yeah, so do I. I really do love it.
That gets really, really woody. Somebody came to my garden and said, "Why don't you plant that in the garden?" I said, "Because it won't come through the winter." And he said, "Try it. It will." I have, and it did.
Really?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, they're outside at the moment, but it's been so mild, I've just left it. So, and this is something, Glycyrrhiza, which we've got in our garden. Our garden's a bit of a mess at the moment because our pond is leaking, and we haven't had much wildlife in it lately for various reasons. And I've made a really drastic decision to take it out, and I'm going to use it. I'm going to make a smaller pond, and because it spans the whole width of the garden, you have to walk over it. And there's been a couple of near accidents lately. When Brentford scored their winner against Man City, I almost went flying. Honestly, I started so excited. There's a stepping stone, and I went so quickly indoors to tell everyone. And I skidded on the bloody thing and almost fell in. Jesus.
No, my other half said, you must congratulate Cleve on Brentford's win over Man City, because he's a football kind of reportery type.
Oh, okay.
So he's across all the teams. He was like, you must congratulate him.
Yeah, exactly. All our Brentford fans, we can die happy now. That was fabulous. But anyway, so we're digging up this pond, which is terrible, but we'll have a smaller pond and we'll have more planting space, because our neighbours aren't so keen, around us. They're not so keen gardeners. So we want a bit more greenery and nature, feel a bit starved where we are.
Did your garden appreciate your leaking pond during the drought, though?
God, it went right down. It was incredible. It was really sad, actually. It's lost its former glory. But it survived. Like, the whole pond's been there for since 1994. When is that? Long time. But I was trying to be too clever as a garden designer, and I wasn't so interested in plants as I am now. So it would get more chance to express itself through greenery rather than hard bricks and mortar.
Well, it's always exciting as a garden designer to be able to turn your attentions to your own plot and make it evolve.
Yeah, except when you've got an allotment, you don't have the time, do you?
I'm probably about to discover that, to be honest. Fortunately, my garden is very small. But that Glycyrrhiza, that is a really wonderful plant. Talking about seed heads, such distinctive, beautiful seed heads. I don't have it in my garden, but it's definitely one on the wish list.
It's really lovely, and the flowers, beautiful blue flowers in the early summer.
Really lovely. Yeah, and clearly, if you've got that in your garden, I think that's one of the things that makes you stand out at Chelsea, or stand out as a garden designer. There's like a crop of garden designers who really love their plants. A lot of, I think, garden designers get into it more for the landscaping or from an artistic point of view. But there is this sort of core of people who just get excited about the planting palette.
Yeah, exactly. And the planting is I've got Humera Ikram. She's going to help with the planting. She used to work with me years ago, and my stepdaughter Stephanie Marling, and you know, because they said we all like to finish early at Chelsea, you know, within a couple of days, so you can strut around being proud of yourself and annoying other people who haven't finished. But I think this is going to take it. I think it's going to go to the wire. We don't want to rush this. It's going to be quite a difficult garden to plant. So
Yeah.
it'll be interesting.
At least you're putting all the groundwork in with your rubble heaps.
Yeah, that's right. No, exactly.
I think what you're doing is absolutely fantastic and wonderful. But I mean, I can just hear the rumbles of call that a garden. I won't call that a garden.
Yeah, no, definitely.
I mean, that was said at Charlotte and Hugo when they did their disused quarry garden, wasn't it? I mean,
I was surprised at some of the reaction, but I guess this will definitely be a Marmite garden. I will hate it. So
yeah.
But you know, that's what we want. We want people talking about it, basically.
Exactly, and increasing everybody's awareness of nature.
Yeah, that's right. And we're as I said before, we're at this critical moment where people need to understand more about, you know, all the things we don't see.
Yeah.
Playing a very vital part in keeping the world alive.
Yeah.
Has it been difficult putting together a full planting scheme? Because obviously you want to include some ornamentals, and so picking natives, non-natives, how have you kind of completely figured out what you want?
Yes, that's an interesting question. I think, in fact, John Sayles, I don't know if you remember John Sayles, Alan, he used to be with the RHS, one of the RHS judges. He was one of the most progressive judges ever. He's fantastic. It's always been very encouraging. And he asked me the same question. It's like, yeah, okay, I need to think about that then. But I think it'll probably be, where I've gone with it is like more on the woodland side, which is always, it's quite an easy option for Chelsea because a lot of the woodland plants are available at that sort of time and looking their best. But you know, we've got you know, ferns and things like Bryza media. So some of the sort of woodland plants that would be looking good at that time of year. And you know, there will be foxgloves and what have I got? I should have got a list here somewhere. It's got so much. I mean, you sort of have to spread your bets, don't you? But the thing is, and I don't know if everyone will get this, but what's difficult is you have to imagine that it was a home. Yeah. So the front garden is actually a garden which has been neglected for some time. So there will be.
Did you use forget-me-nots?
Yes, I've got some forget-me-nots growing at the allotment.
Absolutely brilliant. Yeah.
They may be just over by then, but I don't think that will matter. I
know. There'll be a few flowers left.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And I'm quite keen on doing that. So, but the sense of the front garden is that it's a garden that actually was planted at one point, but it's been up, you know, the tree's been uprooted and some of the shrubs have been left to grow a bit higher than normal. That is a real challenge. We can't find a Cordyline australis, which is one of the plants we've got in there. You have to try and imagine that it was growing quite close to a great big tree. So we're trying to choose a tree that doesn't look Cordyline, that doesn't look in its best shape because it wouldn't underneath the shade of a tree. And so the nursery, Mark Straver, is saying, oh, we can go and find these trees from so and so. I say, yeah, but you don't want to make it look too good. You know, it needs to look slightly ropey. It's not a great advert for your nursery, I admit, but you know.
You know, Cleve, I mentioned to you earlier on about as a child going out for a ride in the car and looking at tumble down houses and things. And there were three plants that one used to see quite commonly in gardens that are, you know, of empty houses, derelict houses, neglected houses. And they were that old-fashioned peony called Rubra, which is the big double red peony. That was one that you always saw. You always saw the Oriental poppy, the old. I mean, this is before we had many colours of Oriental poppies. It was always the orange one, and also the spring flowering Niphophia. That was always there, and there was those three plants that, you know, they were given to each other by cottage gardeners. You know, have a piece of this, have a piece of that. Yeah, and you know they used them because they were long lived. Yeah, and they were still there long after the owners had either died and gone to heaven or wherever they went. Or whatever happened, you know?
That's true. I think it's going to be quite difficult finding plants that are really of a decent size to actually show that these things have been there for quite a long time. Yeah. So, but yeah, the peonies, I like that. That's a good option.
Well, that's where your cleverness comes together, because you put 3 or 4 or 5 together to look as if they're one.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And the other thing we're looking for, which we still haven't found one yet, is a decent sized Sambucus nigra, which is obviously elderflowers grow everywhere, don't they? And buddleia. You know, getting those of a decent size, and cool. I don't think I've actually seen one which is flowered at, you know, because they flower around about Chelsea, don't they?
They do, yeah.
Elderflowers. You never see them at Chelsea, so that's one of our missions, is to find one that we can show it in the Centrepoint Garden.
I love the idea that you've kind of got to have someone on a mission hunting around the country for these very specific plants, wonky cordylines.
Have a plant SOS.
That's right. I know. I always feel like putting something out on Twitter saying, you know, please help. I don't want to get inundated with cordylines. I tell you what, you see them everywhere, don't you? Everywhere. Yes. They were planted in the 80s, weren't they? Most of them. And now they're like amazing. I mean, I planted a few myself in those days when I first started gardening. I haven't planted any lately, but all those ones have been the ones we see.
That's a strange thing, isn't it? They've gone out of fashion, and they are one of the plants that, as you say, 80s, early 80s, it was the plant everybody had. This exotic cabbage plant from New Zealand and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
Now, of course, they didn't used to be reliably hardy, but of course they are now. And it's even got to the stage where they're being bird sown around the garden because they have the flowers, then the little white or pale blue berries. Yeah. Birds eat the fruit, distribute the seed around the garden, and before you know where you are, you've almost got a cordyline forest.
Fantastic. No, I didn't know that. I didn't know birds would spread the seed.
Yeah, they do.
Well, if you've got a cordyline forest, Cleve might be up there, seeing if any of them are wonky enough.
Oh, we've got someone else who's got he's got some silver birch saplings. Great. He's doing a rewilding project, and he's offered us some saplings which are growing too close together. And what we want, because we don't want anything that's growing. You know, when nurseries grow, everything's that they've got 360 degrees sunlight. Everything's growing bolt upright and beautiful and perfect. Trying to find stuff that's not perfect is really difficult.
Yeah.
And again, I mean, I'm sure Mark's having kittens about, you know, his reputation. I said, don't worry, we'll all still work. It's, you know, I did think taking on this job would never work again, but I think we will. I think we'll be fine.
In the current climate with, you know, you say rewilding, that is one of those buzzwords, and there are lots of people who want to rewild even parts of their own home garden, particularly if they've got a bigger plot and they can rewild the bottom half or something. Is there a concern that you do something like this, you gain all the attention and then you just get inundated? I know it's not a bad thing to be busy, and we need to pay the bills, and the bills are all going up, so maybe it is good to be busier, but still that you could just get a lot of people wanting you to come and replicate a bit of this quite intricate, difficult, challenging mix in their gardens.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, I'm thinking that in some ways it might actually save people money, because you know, with garden design, employing a garden designer isn't cheap, and actually getting the stuff built afterwards is so expensive. So if you can actually be saving people money, I mean, that's surely that's an attractive notion.
I love the garden designers. I don't want to cost you as much as I should do.
Yeah, that's right.
Save you some money.
Yeah. I never really was a businessman, but yeah.
Well, it's done quite well for you so far. So what is the kind of time scale on your Chelsea garden? I know that obviously they're being built for ages before the actual week starts, but when does it really get serious, finding your wonky cordylines and stuff?
No, it's serious now. I mean, the first conversation was probably this time last year, so we've been thinking about it already for a year or more. And then we actually started work on it in September. I painted a mural over at Quercus, and that was great. I really enjoyed that. It was really, I was in my element there. I was really nervous about it to begin with, because it was like it's untrodden territory. I didn't know really what I was doing. I did art at college, but I never really stuck to it. So I started this mural and just got in the zone. I was listening to podcasts and painting away, and no, that was really good. So then we did recently, in the last few weeks, we've done all the rubble piles, and Mark Straver's doing all the finding the plants as well. Marina Christopher's helping with some of the growing some of the wildflowers. So it's great. So it's ongoing basically, and I'll be going there this week to look at the plants, and that's the important thing. You've got to keep checking the plants. Some people don't check their plants often enough, because you might see things you may have missed if you didn't come in.
You've also got to have that sort of you've got to be variable, haven't you? You've got to adjust as you go along, because the one thing that you want, you might not be able to get, but there might be something else there.
Yeah, you have to really hedge your bets by over ordering on quantities and but just by doing more visits, you can see various opportunities that might spring up. So serendipity does come into it a lot.
Yeah. Well, particularly with things like weedy stuff, if you're growing them from seed, and if you just happen to get that bad batch, or things don't germinate, which can happen, I suppose, then you need something in reserve.
No, that's right. And actually, nettle, showing you nettles earlier, nettles are actually quite difficult to. They don't like it in pots. You need a much larger sort of container, like a shallow crate.
Yeah.
To grow in, and you can put them on some sort of fabric that you can lift out of that. Otherwise, they just don't like it in pots for some reason.
Well, if you look at the root system, you can see why, because they're a rhizome that travels under the ground and then pops up.
Yeah, that's right.
We always love this podcast to be full of tips, but I don't think anyone ever thought there'd be tips on how to grow nettles in a container.
You haven't tasted our nettle soup, they'll be thanking me later.
Yeah, but that is nice. I've never tried nettle soup.
Yeah.
Or only ever think of nettle tea.
And honestly, it's really good for you as well. It's great. It's really nourishing. It's got lots of minerals and stuff in it. So,
well, seeing how you eat, you must be so healthy.
Yeah, I don't feel quite healthy enough today, but honestly, since going vegan, I was like, I couldn't believe the health benefits. It's like off the charts. So I'm actually thinking, I've been saying this for the last 3 years now. I'm because I used to run and do track and field athletics, and quite before my 65th birthday, I might try and run again. So I feel that's the result of just feeling generally a lot better. So watch this space.
And if people are interested in the kind of more vegan side of your world, obviously you did write The Garden of Vegan as well.
Yeah.
Go and get hold of that.
Yeah, that's the book. It's been a really interesting journey. It's quite disturbing to begin with, because I saw a lot of stuff which I didn't know about, and having been a vegetarian most of my life, I thought I knew all the bad stuff, but I didn't know half of it. So that's been quite interesting, and people's reaction has been quite interesting as well, because I didn't expect how aggressive some people can be just by saying the V word.
Yeah,
but it's been quite encouraging. The last 2 or 3 years have been really encouraging, because a lot of people have been getting in touch, privately saying, we're doing it now and we feel fantastic, and we can see, we've seen the various films I recommended them to see, like Earthlings and Dominion. Once you've seen those films, there's just no going back. So I just think gardeners got so much to offer with all the trouble we're facing as a species, and the trouble we're causing other species. And I think we're really well placed to actually deal with some of these issues in a really easy way, in a sort of a low-key way, just by raising awareness about the small things in life that keep the bigger things going. So
I think that message is getting through today.
Yeah, it is slowly, isn't it? It takes time. Like any major change takes a lot of time, doesn't it? So I'm a really impatient git. So the older I get, the more impatient I get. Like, do it now,
Well, I suppose that's quite good for a Chelsea Flower Show garden. I mean, that's the whole name of the game: impatience. Get to the finished product in a few weeks.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, I suppose we've kept you for quite a long time, so we probably should squeeze in some Flomo and release you back to planning your Chelsea garden. Now, Flomo, for anyone who's not caught one of our podcasts before, is how Alan and I live our lives. It's this sort of fear of missing out we get about certain plants. And I suppose the world of social media doesn't help. There are already gardens to look at. There are already loads of magazines and books, but then social media just throws all these plants in your face all the time. And of course, other people in the gardening world. So I need more sort of winter interest in my garden, really. When I first moved into my tiny suburban plot, I just had all these flowery things I wanted to grow, a little bit of a kind of autumn leaf, but I need more evergreens, more structure, really. And someone the other day showed me a holly, which I think was a bit of confusion about the name, but I think is silver milkmaid. So a really lovely variegated holly. And I was very taken with that. I've got a sprig of it that I can just look at and sort of hold in various places and see if I want to grow it. So that's my serious FLOMO. But I was talking to the head gardener at King's College in Cambridge, Steve Coghill, who is such an inspiration. And he mentioned a passion flower. This is the silly FLOMO because I can't really grow it. But Passiflora quadrangularis. That little chuckle. It's just crazy. It's like a jellyfish. It is like some kind of sea creature with these sort of purple tentacles hanging off the flower. And I just thought, what a showstopper if I could ever grow that. And I imagine...
Well, can I interrupt you a minute? Just say this. If you could grow it, it would swamp your whole garden because it's such a vigorous vine. I mean, it really is.
Well, I've currently got your Cabea pringlei kind of scrambling over the back fence. So we all know I love something that's a bit on the vigorous side. Rampant, that's what I'm going for. But it's just crazy. And I assume too tender really to try. I have no, under glass area where I could grow it. So I think that's one for the future. But I just had to mention it so that I could put a picture on the screen in the video version so that people could see.
We can all see the jellyfish.
Yeah, the jellyfish flower.
Love to see that. Definitely.
That's great. Cleve, is there anything that you're kind of wish listing?
I thought about it. It's difficult. I mean, aside from the weeds thing, which is like a relatively new thing for me, I've always been sort of drawn to landscapes that are of their place, like deserts or woodland, those extremes. And because coming from Porlock, we had woodland all around us and moorland, they all got their own distinct characters. And so gardens always, I mean, I love gardening, and our garden is very ornamental, and we've got, we've got aralias and yew and Fatsia, Schefflers, and so it's slightly on the exotic side, and I'm going to probably enhance that when we do more planting, otherwise it's going to look a bit disjointed. But I've always got a hankering after just pure landscape. I'm not describing it very well, but
I think it's a sense of place, Cleve.
Yeah, sense of place. And it's really difficult, and I think when you see it and you know it, and it just hits you in the soul, doesn't it? And you just you can't do any better than that.
Well, you mentioned the desert here, and I said to somebody, I can't think what it was now, but anyway, I was putting a plant in the desert wash here in the garden, and they said, well, that doesn't come from a desert. And I said, well, it looks as if it does, and that's enough for me. And that's the feeling you need. You need to have that sort of No, I love that dry garden, the gravel garden there. I mean, because I was a John Brooks student. John Brooks taught me. And he introduced me to gravel gardening, and it really, really does. I really enjoy it so much. I want to do gravel everywhere, and I enjoyed your garden, Alan, when I came. Yeah, thank you.
And so, if I suppose that I would love personally either a gravel garden or a woodland. I mean, it's like a bit general, but
you need to move to Huntingbrook.
I do need to. We need more space. I just want to show you something that I might put in our garden, because this is Aloysia
trifella.
Yeah. And so lemon verbena, and it's just absolutely, the smell of these leaves is just...
Everyone should plant one somewhere where they just brush past it and just put your hand out. I mean, it's just so refreshing. It's alive. It's lovely.
It's incredible. Okay, literally over there, 3 or 4 houses away, it's someone's planted one, and it's grown into a tree, and it's in a backyard, so it's sort of east facing, and it's sheltered, and it must be 15 to 25 feet.
Now, before you say anything else, Cleve, doesn't that just illustrate global warming, climate change?
Yeah.
Because this plant 30 years ago wouldn't have grown like that.
No, but I've never seen one that big.
No,
it's just happily getting on with it over there, and so I'm thinking of maybe putting this in our garden. We've got some in pots, just to make some tea with.
Yeah,
it does that very well. But I'm thinking maybe of making a tree out of it. Hang on. Sorry, I've forgotten the name of this plant. It's this leaf. It's just the most stunning colour. I think what's very underrated are fruit trees with their autumn colour.
Yeah.
And this is persimmon.
Persimmon.
Yeah, persimmon. There you go. But I mean, the colours are amazing. It's stunning. We've got one at our allotment, which is not on our allotment, but in like the communal side of our allotment. These are the colours of that tree, and with the orange fruit on as well. It's just the most stunning sight.
Everything from yellowy oranges to deep burnished scarlet, just
the
whole range.
And you know, it was too early, I was going to try and get some leaves from our Bramley apple tree. If you look at a Bramley, most people don't take any notice of apple trees because they're apple trees, you know. The leaves are just stunning. If you just try and check out a local apple tree, you'll be amazed at what sort of colours you get.
Yeah, beautiful.
Oh yeah, and for my gravel garden, which I eventually might get, it doesn't look much, but Artemisia schmittiana.
Yeah, lovely.
You've
Love
got
it.
that, surely. Yeah.
Yep.
It needs lots of good drainage, doesn't it? I forgot some groundsel estate.
Oh yeah, lovely.
I'm gonna have some of that. See, that's got a lot of goodness in it as well. What else have I got? Didn't know I had this bag. Oh yes, this is something we actually do have. So I'm cheating a bit, but that's medlar. We've got a medlar tree at our allotment, and we feed the whole of West London with it. We've got so much fruit. It's incredible.
I love this bag of treats that you've suddenly happened upon.
I know. Lurking in the corner there.
It's just like a little extra encore at the end of the podcast. Right, yeah. How exciting. Alan, did you have any FLOMO to share this week for episode 100?
I have one from this programme, in actual fact, which is something I don't grow, which I think I should grow, and that's licorice, which is Glycyrrhiza, the blue flowers.
That's it.
Lovely fruits that Cleve so generously showed us.
Yeah.
I don't grow that, and I should grow it. So that's gone on my wish list with a star.
Good.
Which means get it.
It has been such a wonderful, uplifting chat.
You finish, can I just ask you, why don't you make a couple of cuttings out of your sprig of silver milkmaid?
Oh, well, I did wonder about doing this, but it had been cut for I suppose a day or so, and I didn't know how much sort of.
Always back your luck.
Well, I'll go do it now.
And if you when you take the lower leaves off, the very lowest leaf that you take off on the opposite side of the stem, if you scrape a tiny little piece of bark away, or top skin away, if you like, just to wound it, that will aid the rooting.
Right. It's another thing for the windowsill. The other half will be delighted. It's currently full of coleus, which he hates. So I can't remember why I said something like, "Oh, do you know what's really great about this coleus?" He said, "There is nothing great about coleus." He's not a fan.
Yeah, there are plants like that. What's the one in? I'm trying to think of because my brother used to live in Florida, and I'm trying to think crotons.
Yeah, croton. Yeah.
Yeah, I met a guy who's absolutely mad on them, and I just couldn't.
Well, I think they're horrible things.
Yeah, could not see it at all. I mean, I always love to give plants the benefit of the doubt because everything has its place, doesn't it? So
yeah,
I just couldn't.
Maybe in somewhere like Florida or something, they actually look as if they should be growing there.
Even in Florida, just wrong.
The look on your face says it.
Actually, the bit, and then going back to what I was talking about. Natural landscape, you just go into the Everglades, it's all you need. It's just stunning.
Yeah.
All the mangroves as well. Fantastic.
Well, actually, I mean, talking about landscapes before we wind things up, we always do holiday around Somerset, and the Quantocks, we sort of did an impromptu walk. We often sit down and look at a map and plan out where we're going to go, but we just sort of stopped and got out and walked through the Quantocks, and I just never wanted to leave that kind of mossy little stream running through, and you go down to the valley and you're just encased in green, and the birds are singing, and it's got that kind of cathedral like effect. I just have a little shack and stay there the whole time, I think.
I know. I'm really in my element and that sort of thing. That's just wonderful. It brings back so many memories.
Well, this has been just a joyful chat. Like you just talk for an hour and more, and you just come out of it with a massive smile on your face, and your cheeks are slightly hurting. And
actually, now you said that, I've never seen anyone smile so much. I've watched a couple of your episodes, and I thought, gosh, she's a very smiley person. I wish I could smile that much. I'm sure my wife.
It's
My
the
wife
company.
Christine would be very pleased if I did smile that much.
I think it's the company, it's the planty chat. I mean, how can you not grin with glee during these podcasts? It's lovely. Also, I mean, as an aside, my resting bitch face is awful, so I've got to do I've got to fight that.
I did wonder.
You should
Anyway,
see me
thank you.
driving. I look very angry when I'm driving.
Thank you so much for inviting me on the show. Will you come and see us at Chelsea if you're coming?
We will.
Yeah, that would be absolutely wonderful. I mean, I cannot wait to see this garden in real life and all the things you've spoken about.
Good, but I'm really excited, and I'm even more excited at seeing what Alan dresses up as, his outfit. I'm already looking forward to that.
Yeah, I've said before, I put a lot of effort into my outfits for Chelsea, and then I realised that the only way I would ever outshine Alan is if I turned up naked, and I've decided not to go for that. And even then, no one would pay attention; they'd still look at Alan.
Oh dear, we'll have to get him and Jimmy Blake together. This is my little nod to Alan and Jimmy Blake, a little bit of colour. I don't do colour very well.
Well, you should have seen Jimmy's outfit this year at the Chelsea Flower Show. Nobody could top that. I mean,
Fantastic.
where it came from, I don't know. It looks so good and expensive and wonderful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
brilliant.
Well, until then, good luck with all of your various things you need to find and all the magic you need to work. As Alan said earlier, you are a wizard, so it's clearly all going to come together, and we just can't wait to see the finished product.
Oh, thank you so much.
Good luck.
then,
God bless.
Happy gardening, everybody.
All right.
Happy gardening.
Bye. There will be a message for... Oh, hang on. What am I trying to say here? This is what happens when you get to my age. Thoughties. It's like, you wait.
You may or may not know, but I have a blooper section on the end, so I'm delighted every time something goes wrong.
Brilliant. Here we go again. This is...
Okay, babe, take your time.
I
think, Clive.
We are.
Sorry.
That's right.
That's going on the end, I know.
That's Joe Swift. He's influenced you to say that, hasn't he? He's always calling me Clive or Clifford.
Talking about nibbled leaves, Clive. Cleve. So
There he goes again. We should have a gong every time he says time.
Klaxon. Oh, what's happened now?
Chippendales have come back. He's off.
No, he's disappeared.
Chippendales.